Vanessa Harden. Welcome to Our Men Unbowed. We are live on the podcast. My mother always said to me, your podcast, it should be unapologetic and unbowed, because I'm trying to get people to be as authentic as they are, show their true selves, people that are doing things that are kind of changing the world. So I figured I am going to reach out to Vanessa Harden. I am honored to have you on the podcast, Vanessa. I've known you for a few years now, but your accomplishments is just incredible. All right. For a young lady like yourselves, I know you do a better job of introducing yourself, but I'm just going to, share with the audience a few things that I've come to learn about you. Some things I didn't even know myself. You're a very humble person and you keep a lot to yourself. But Vanessa Harden is an award-winning artist and designer focused on creating thought-provoking experiences and installations. I mean, this is how it describes what you do when I check you out online. But there's more to you. I mean, you're the founder of Wild Flag Studios. I want you to tell us more about that. It's a luxury art installation for brands worldwide. I mean, let's talk about some other places we can find you in the media, some of your accomplishments, right? I mean, you even sound surprised about some of the things I'm saying about you.
Like a little bit, yeah.
It's really impressive. I'm really proud of some of your accomplishments because I know you so well. You've done stuff that can be seen in Vogue, The Guardian, CNN, Wired, Bloomberg Business Week, BBC, and The Vice, just to mention a few. So Vanessa, let's get started. So tell me a little bit about you, Vanessa. Where do you stand on life itself? Who is Vanessa Harden?
Oh, wow. That's a big question. Well, first, I wanted to thank you for having me on your show. I really appreciate this. This is quite an honor. So thank you very much.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure.
Where do I stand? Who am I? I'm a creative. I'm a designer. I'm a problem solver. I'm somebody who uses design and creativity to address challenges and tries to come up with solutions for those challenges. And I enjoy people, and I enjoy trying to use my skills in a way that makes things better in some kind of capacity. And I feel that I've found my purpose doing so. So
That's
yeah.
awesome. That's awesome. I'm glad you thank you for sharing that. But you see yourself as an artist and a designer, and you often describe yourself as that. But something that's consistent when I started doing a little bit of research about who Vanessa Harden really is,
Mhm.
outside of the fact that you're actually an educator. You rarely say that, but that's kind of what you do. You share your passion through being an educator. But on top of that, and this is one of the reasons I really had to get you on a podcast today, was I see you, after looking through a lot of the things you do, as a change agent. You provoke change through the things that you do. So I want you to touch on that a little bit for me. You're also an MIT graduate. The list just goes on and on. But the consistent thing I see with you is that you like to provoke change in whatever discipline you're at. So give us a little bit of an insight on that.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head when you mentioned education and being an educator. I think that well, for me, anyways, the way that I try and promote change and the way that I try and create some kind of a positive impact is through
Right.
education. And I believe that education gives power to people. Knowledge is power. And so I think and I also think it's important to create relationships between academia, education, and other groups of individuals, because I think everybody can share challenges, share solutions,
Right.
and come up with solutions to various challenges together. And to give you a little bit of an example,
Yes.
I teach at NYU, and
Right.
what I teach is I teach various classes, but a lot of them are geared towards real life situations. And so I introduce students to, say, stakeholders or partners who are experiencing various types of agricultural challenges, for example. So, we have a partner that we work with in Ghana. and
Right.
yeah, they're building
West
a
Africa.
village. Exactly.
Yes,
They're
yes.
building a village and they have issues with water filtration.
Mhm.
So I'm a professor in the engineering and design department, and so some of my students are working on various types of water filtration devices. And whereas some other interesting things we're working with a food pantry actually here in Brooklyn, and
Right.
so some of my students are looking at hydroponic systems. And so there's a lot of how do you use design and how to use technology to create change.
Right.
And I think for me, my role is not necessarily to come up with solutions because I'm not a, I like connecting people together, and I think the more people you have together working on a challenge, the better chances you are of coming up with some kind of a solution for that challenge, right? That problem.
Yeah. What was your inspiration in going down that path? I mean, you're using your talents or your skill set, so to speak, not to bolster your resume, but more to actually create some kind of change. What inspired you to do that? Like, where did that come from? You didn't just accidentally fall into this role. You decided to become an educator to help make real change. I've seen some of your work. You're on the streets of Brooklyn, you're in Manhattan, you're in New York, and then you're in Ghana in Africa. I mean, your work has touched different cities, different places. But what inspired you to go down that path?
Um, so I mean, I think, you want to create maybe not everyone, but for me anyways, I wanted to, I want to give back in some kind of way. I don't want to
Right,
be using my skills to create more waste for this
right,
planet. I
right,
don't want to use my skills to create any more problems, any more hurt. In fact, I think it's a duty and for, I think it's if it's a duty for designers to
right,
solve problems and make the world a better place. If you
right,
are a designer, then that should be your unspoken ethical kind of
right,
mantra that you go by. Um, and why did I? So for me, I kind of have like a certain. I have these kind of foundation pillars that I really try and maintain throughout my own kind of ethical journey
right,
with regards to how I approach the world and design. Um, but I think there's just you just feel a calling. I think everybody
right.
has a calling to do something or other,
Yes,
and some people heed that calling, and some people don't. And for
yes.
me, it was a
It takes action on the calling to the extent that you have, and that's why it's so impressive. But I want to ask you something else. I want to go right back. Let's go not too far back. I mean, let's go about 10 years ago. You did a TED talk in London, England, and I'm from London, England. You're from Montreal, Canada. How'd you end up in London, England, doing a TED talk about change, about public art, so to speak? But also, again, you're trying to invoke and provoke some change through your entire speech. Guys, if you want to go check this out, check out Vanessa on YouTube and listen to her TED talk. I'm not sure if she wants you to listen to this TED talk because it was many, many years
many
ago,
years ago.
but it gives you an insight on who she is as a person and how far she's come even since then. But even then, you were trying to, disrupt and provoke change. I mean,
Hmm.
public intervention. You even said at one point you're most interested in public intervention and making people think. Why do you want people to think? Think about what exactly?
Think about, so every person, every human has power.
Right,
And think about that power that you have and how you use it and how you can use it. And I also think about your environment. So for me, space, I work in space. I
right,
create within space. So whether I create installations or interventions or even various types of design solutions, it's all involving physical space. And so I find personally inspiration in space. And I think that, as you walk through cities, as you walk through natural environments, as you walk through urban or rural areas, there's moments for surprise, there's moments for
right,
intervention, there's moments
right.
for um, um, the unknown. And so at this point, when I was speaking at doing this TED talk, I was really interested in how you can create unexpected surprises in daily lives to make people's essentially their days a lot more interesting,
Right.
and how to put a smile on somebody's face,
Mhm.
and what role does design play in
Mhm.
that space. And so that's how that's how I came about interventions, and really just trying to looking at how do you make people happier, and how do you surprise people in urban
Right.
spaces.
Do you feel as though you actually did you feel like you accomplished that through your efforts over the years? I mean, it's been a decade since the TED Talk I'm talking about. Have you grown as a person even closer to the to what you were trying to accomplish?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely feel that I've grown, like I think um my work has changed tremendously, and there's different points in my career that's affected me deeply as a human, that's changed who I am as a human,
Mm-hmm.
and therefore has changed my career path.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think it's these moments of these reality checks,
Right.
that you give yourself, and also that are given to you,
Mm-hmm.
and you acknowledge them, and you realize them, and you adjust and pivot your life accordingly. And I think everyone goes through this. In particular,
Absolutely. Yeah.
just looking at COVID right now, a lot of people are pivoting their lives
That's
accordingly,
right.
right? So
Right.
I think that there's been certain things for me that have occurred that have affected who I am as a designer, as a human,
Wow.
and as a creative, and have helped um, mold who I've become,
Right.
as a human. Mm-hmm.
Right. You know what? I'm gonna take that and kind of as a segue into now. So we went. I decided to go a decade back into Vanessa's life. Now I want to come now and see. I'm gonna do that by actually reading out a quote that you put on one of your work and sculptures you did in Italy, I believe. The footprints. You remember that art that you did, footprints?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Remember that's it's amazing. It's beautiful. And you wrote this in your installation. It was in Palazzo Venice in Italy, right? You said, "Footprint is an art installation that conveys the number of forced migrants crossing borders per minute due to conflict, a sobering representation of the amount of people currently embarked on a journey to find peace." I find that to be a very profound statement. And I think that truly represents the Vanessa Harden that I've come to know. So I wonder if you want to touch on that a little bit about the footprints and why you made that statement and why you chose to use your work for activism, so to speak. I think that you could accurately call it that, but go ahead.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, so my work addresses different types of topics, whether it be current, or topics that are discussions, that promote
Right,
discussion in some kind of
right.
capacity, and that's what
Yeah.
I'm really interested in.
Mhm,
And this piece came about. It was for the Venice Biennale,
mhm.
and it came about as a piece that we. And when I say we, it was myself and my creative partner David Gardner at Wildflight
Right.
Studios, which is
Mhm,
a collective of artists that I established. And
mhm.
we wanted to create a piece that really spoke about what was, and this was a couple of years ago, what was really happening, in particular in Italy, and forced migration. So many migrants were coming across Italy and Greece, and there were so many different tragedies happening at sea in the Mediterranean. And so we wanted to raise awareness, and we thought, obviously, it's the world stage of the Venice Biennale.
Right.
So we created this piece, and this piece we actually created in collaboration with some students at NYU, and we were looking at data from the UN, and we
Mhm,
were looking at how we could map this data on a lighting installation.
mhm.
So we
Wow.
found that there was 76 vulnerable migrants crossing borders every
Mhm.
minute. And so, using those numbers, we
Right.
created 76 shadows walking through a field of lights that we
Wow.
created in a black room, a
So
completely dark room,
creative.
with the
Wow.
sound of crunching feet. So this
Yes.
is very much an experiential
Mhm,
installation, and one that made you really feel, the sense of loneliness, this
mhm.
crunch of the feet, and
Right.
these shadows walking by. And it was really trying to evoke. this feeling and just listening to these footprints.
So
So
that's amazing. That's amazing that you would go into it that deeply. Again, everything you seem to put your hands on is always in an effort to provoke some kind of change and obviously create some kind of solution to an issue. I'm going to fast forward now to something else that you're really passionate about. And I think this is the gardening, right?
mhm.
Right. So tell me about Guerrilla Gardeners. What is that? What does it stand for? What are you trying to accomplish through that?
Right. So guerrilla gardening is the illicit cultivation of somebody else's land. So guerrilla gardeners, what they do is they look at public space as opportunities for beautification as well as to create gardens and fruit bearing gardens as well.
Right.
And so there's so many neglected patches of land in urban spaces in particular. And so so guerrilla gardeners go and they reclaim this neglected land and they transform it into to beautiful, lush green spaces. So I'm very I'm very passionate about guerrilla gardening, and I find it's a really great way to to create change, but
Right.
to also get involved with people and get involved with your community
Right.
and to educate yourself, to eat fresh food, to it's a great hobby. There's so many good reasons,
Right. I can imagine it. And that
right?
kind of leads,
And
yeah, that
so
leads me to what are you trying to educate them on, Vanessa? When you say educate them, what in particular are you trying to educate them on?
well, going back to what we were saying a little bit before is,
Yeah.
wanting to, so I work with designers, students that are wanting to become designers. And so
Mhm.
how do you, so I'm introducing students to people that are experiencing challenges. So educating people on the benefits of food and also exposing them to people that are having a difficult time producing food and seeing if there's a way that they can contribute their skills to
Mhm.
to solving or to trying to come up with some kind of a solution to
Mhm.
working with people. So creating senses of communities that also creating communities that uh, between a community between students and and people of the public. So really just trying to take, because I mean there's this whole debate, around academia
Right.
being very like, inward facing. And so really
Right.
trying to get students out there and getting them, learning from real life experiences. That's what I'm really trying to promote.
That's amazing. What about children? I mean, you say students, I'm assuming you're talking about the young adults and probably the college students. What about the
Mm.
kids? How does this affect the kids, the younger kids? I would think this would be impactful on the younger children in the communities, right?
Yeah. So Subversive Gardener, we actually it became it went from an art project, which is something that I started many years ago, and
Right.
has evolved into a nonprofit. And
Mhm.
so in our nonprofit, we do lots of workshops in the summertime with kids.
Oh, wow.
And it's so much fun. And in fact, we were awarded a grant to build a garden in a primary school. So, we'll see what happens,
Wonderful.
obviously with COVID and situations, but when
Yeah.
it's safe to do so, we'll be doing that, which is really exciting as well. So, this is ageless. This goes across the board.
Right. I'm going to ask you, for those of us that are not so educated on gardening, is what are the benefits from gardening that could really affect your life? I mean, let's really break it down and assume you're speaking to someone that has absolutely no idea that has no experience in gardening, and and I want you to kind of lay it out and break it down, because I want the kids that may listen to this or parents that may listen to this to understand how getting kids involved in this kind of a movement or this path might actually help the growth of the kid.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So like, well, it's about food,
Mhm.
right? So
Yeah.
there's so many different things about gardening that are fantastic. But if we start with food, first and foremost, growing your own food, if you're able to, that's fantastic. But being exposed to fresh food, understanding fresh food. It allows you to inform yourself more about what you're putting into your body, and therefore make better decisions. And then, of course, if you're putting good food into your body, you're nourishing your body, you're nourishing your brain.
Right.
And so gardening links right, straight to food and food production. And so there's very obvious benefits there. But then also just the very relaxed kind of environment that you're creating by gardening. I mean, it's a very
Right.
meditative process, and it's one that's very fascinating because you're taking something that's a seed, and
Right.
it's a biological process. You're taking a
Right.
seed, you're watering, and you're creating life, and that
That's what
in
I thought.
itself
Yeah.
is a really beautiful and important lesson, and one that I think everybody should learn. I think every student needs to plant seeds. For me, my students who are not children, who are college students, their first assignment is, here are some seeds. Go
Right.
grow something. If you want to learn how to design in this space, you need to grow something first. So it's really like, so there's so much that can be said about that. And then of course, just really making it creates also perspective, so you're eating and you're understanding, and there's it's cultural as well. You're eating certain types of foods,
Right.
and especially when you're living in a city, different people from all over the world are gathering, and they're eating different types of food as well. And so what kind of food are you growing? Well, this is the food that I'm growing, and where are you from? And so
Yeah.
creates discussion. You wind up meeting people. It's a really,
That's right.
it's healthy. So there's so many good things about gardening, and about I mean, also, it links back to therapy.
Right.
You can reach people through gardening therapy and sensorial gardens, and
Wow.
people that are visually impaired. There's this whole field of study around, so it's really
That's interesting. I never thought about it from that perspective. It could be very
gardening is
therapeutic.
great in so many ways. Oh yeah,
Yes.
it's a very good and yeah, it's a very important, I think,
I can
skill to
imagine. I
be
can
able to.
imagine. It's interesting. My daughter, she's 7 years old now, and she's constantly asking me for a pet and another pet. And I told her the other day, I said, why don't you just get a plant and nurture the plant? And why don't you do that? Because I started to think, after our conversations about what you do, I started to think that's not a bad idea. It's not a bad idea for every child to kind of nurture something and care about it and kind of see it grow and blossom. You know what
Mhm.
I'm saying? It's like the what you call it, the success of that plant. It really depends on how you nurture it. If
Mhm.
you neglect it, you'll see the effects of it. Because that's, in a way, that's life, right? That
Yeah,
is life. It's a true representation of life.
absolutely, absolutely. It's a beautiful metaphor, really,
You know?
and it's one that, you cultivate your own form. You cultivate your own skills, your own green thumb.
Yes.
It's really, yeah, it's quite poetic, and like I said, it's incredibly important, and something that I think everyone should understand also, where their food comes from.
Right, right.
Mhm.
So I'm gonna, it would be. I know in Africa, almost every child before they're 12 years old have gone to the farm. When they eat something, they know where it's from. Some
Yeah.
kids don't even tell you how the process of most of the food they eat. Do you think that's an important dialogue to have, or an important
Yeah, no,
for the child?
absolutely. And I think, like I think that the food movement, there are so many unsung heroes, and they're the
Mhm.
people that are the most prominent and the ones creating the most change. It's certainly, it's certainly not me, honestly. Like, I feel that in some ways, of course, I'm taking the platform that I have, and I'm
Right,
taking, the skills that I have, and I'm doing what I can. But I also feel that there's some people that are, um, you know, going about this in a, like I believe that there are people that are really in the middle of this right now.
right.
Like
In the
I also,
battlegrounds of it.
exactly,
Okay.
that are not getting the recognition, but that
Right,
are actually the ones that are, like, some people that are doing incredible work right now. And so I think it's important to recognize that, and to recognize that, like, I mean, if you think various types of people in the movement, like people like Ron Finley, for example, the
Hmm.
gangster gardener from LA. And,
Right.
there's a lot, Richard Reynolds, the Guerrilla Gardener from London,
Mhm.
there's a lot of people who are, I think not only are they doing, we're doing work, but we're trying to put the spotlight on other people that are creating significant change in
Amazing.
their communities as well. It's amazing how many people are involved who we don't even really know
Yeah,
about,
right.
but that
Yes.
are doing such incredible work,
Yes.
and these are the people that really deserve the recognition.
And this is why I kind of started this podcast on Bowed. Is I really wanted to speak to real people with real stories and a
Yeah.
very inspiration. You know what I'm saying? So, and
Mhm.
that really kind of takes me into this. You've touched on a few things that you've done, and each one of them, as far as I'm concerned, provokes change, right?
Mhm.
But I want you to tell me a story on how, because it couldn't have been Vanessa just got up and decided, you know what, I want to change the world. Oh, I want to change the world with things I like doing. And oh, well, look, the world is changing. Of
Mhm.
course not. I really want an authentic story. I want you to tell me a story where you've found yourself in a tough place
Mhm.
and you survived it and it's made you a different person. For better or worse, it has made you a
Mhm.
different person, hopefully for better.
I mean, there's a couple of things that I can say to that.
Yeah?
But I think I wanted to first mention a little bit about um, uh, talk a little about a story that affected the work that I do tremendously,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a really sobering moment for me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the reason why I think my work right now is where it is. And I this is maybe about, I don't know, maybe about, I don't know, like 6 7 years ago or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in London, and I was sat outside an exhibition space. I was having a show, and I was sat there, and this is maybe like 8:30 in the morning, and the exhibition space opened at 9. And so I was sat outside having a coffee, and I had books that I written, had been published in on the table,
Right.
and I'm sat there, and this man comes over to me, and he'd been drinking, and he wanted to have a conversation and wanted to look at the books. And then I said, well, you can't have the books, these are my books. And we got into a bit of a conversation, and finally he asked me, he said, are you a gardener? And I said, yes, I am a gardener. And he said, I'm a gardener too.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, oh, okay, all right, well, tell me more. He said, yes, I was the head gardener for this place, and I was the head gardener for that. And if you know anything about the UK and London in particular, I mean, gardening is like, it's part of their, like, it runs through their veins.
That's right.
Um, and so he was talking about gardening, and then he said, but now I'm homeless, and so I forage for food, and I know what I can eat, and I know what I can't eat. And then he said to me, so you're a gardener. What have you been planting that I can eat?
Wow.
And at that moment, I'd been planting
Wow.
flowers, right? I'd been
Yes.
beautifying spaces. I
Mm-hmm.
hadn't been growing anything for anyone to eat.
Mm-hmm.
And that for me was it was a sobering moment. And it was a moment that really made me it made me think, like, what is my contribution right now?
Right.
And I could be doing a lot more. And so since then, I've been focusing primarily on food. But I think this story basically, it's one of these that, like, I was taught a real lesson,
Right.
and it was something that I had to learn to be able to then pivot and readjust, and hopefully,
That's a powerful story. How you move forward, do you feel like you've answered that question?
oh, I certainly haven't answered, as in I've addressed these questions.
Yes.
But these are such huge problems,
Hmm.
that are systematic, of course, systemic, sorry, of course.
Yes.
So they're, I've addressed it to my ability, and also I've introduced it to others, and I'm addressing it within groups of people, because again, I believe together you can create a lot more change.
That's powerful. So I kind of want to stay where we're at right now. It's still with the gardening topic, right? Still with the gardening topic. Where is the room for growth? in this? Where's the room for change? Who else can help this movement? And are we obligated as citizens to educate our co-citizens about gardening and about the importance of it? In other words, like, for example, New York City, for example, it's a city. Do you have to live in a place that is rural? Do you have to have a lot of land to be interested in gardening? Or like in London, for example, I'm from London, England, so I know we had a garden. You could have a plant in your house and you can really nurture from there. You know, a lot of people would listen to you speak and go, you know what, I live in a city. I wish I could do that. That sounds interesting. But I want them to know that there's always a way, correct?
There's always a way. I mean, this is obviously it's a fundamental challenge, you know, like, yeah, great, I'd love to garden. I don't have space. That's most of us are dealing with that. And that's the whole
Yeah.
point of guerrilla gardening, is to go and find space. To go and find space that's not being used, and growing something. Now, how like how effective is that going to be? I mean, you it's if you're going to find a place to grow, you obviously have to make sure that you find somewhere that's near your house, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll need to water it. Often getting a group of people together is often a really good idea, because you know
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you can't water it, someone else. So I also feel, again, as I was mentioning, is that a lot of these things, if you want to grow food, then also finding out who else wants to grow food, and
Right.
really together, you know, making this something that you'd like to do, because there is um, there is access to community gardens, but it's again difficult to get into the community gardens. And is it a fair system to get into them? And so it's depending on where you are,
Mm-hmm.
there's different ways of going about it. But it's not always straightforward, and I appreciate that. It's
Yeah.
definitely not always straightforward. You may, you know, wind up with a herb plant on your windowsill for the moment, you know, until you find that perfect place.
Well, most things that are worth doing and never straightforward, correct? You know,
No,
you
absolutely.
got to make it work.
Exactly, exactly. So I think it's but guerrilla gardening is a way to try and move around that, and to find spaces that you can use in public spaces.
You know, I touched on this a little bit at the start, Vanessa. I talked about the fact that you're an artist, a designer, and an educator. But the part that we didn't touch a lot on is it's kind of ingrained in who you are as a person, is the activism that you have, and you kind of used what you do as a bit of an activist, right? So let's talk about social change right now in general, right? Where do you think the world is today in terms of women? Like, how do we perceive women? I noticed in your TED talk you did again in England 10 years ago, you actually touched on that topic, on how people perceive women. You even had a social what you call it, a social experiment going on there on that. I was very interested. But fast forward until now,
Mhm.
how do you feel the world perceives women?
Mm, I mean, it's uh, you know, I guess it would depend firstly on where you are in the world. You know, I'm fortunate enough to be living somewhere where it's certainly not perfect,
Mhm.
but you know, I don't have major restrictions on where I can go and who I can see. And
Mhm.
I know that, however, for myself, and working within the design industry, and working in particular in construction, so designing and building large scale architectural installations,
Right.
um, it's been difficult. You know, you walk onto the site with your drill, and people are like, "Who is this woman?" And how does she? You know, you always have to somehow reinforce. You know, oh no, I know what I'm doing. Trust me. And you're having to convince people all the time. And so it's a very I know that for me, being a woman has definitely, there's been a lot more challenges, in particular, working in a man's world, not a man's world, but a man's, man, can I say, industries that have been traditionally very male oriented.
Yeah.
Um, and
A male dominated.
very much so, very much so. You know, if you look at construction now, and so then if you can imagine, you know, like anything from wood, steel, concrete, all of these manufacturers, you'd be hard pressed to find women that are working at these factories or these manufacturers. And so, it's been a challenge for me. But that said, things have come a long way. And I think it's important for women to push forward and to foster an environment for other women to be able to move forward. And that's also women of like that's women of different demographics, women of color. I think it's really important to understand where you are and how you can actually help elevate other women. So I also think that's your role. And I'm now I'm an educator. I'm a teacher. It's my job to create an environment that fosters inclusion and that makes people feel welcome and that elevates and it prepares people for the real world. So I think the role of women has certainly evolved. I think it's a lot better, but I still think there's a lot more work to be done. I mean, look at Kamala Harris. It's incredible. Those are some big steps forward right now. So it's
Absolutely.
To be alive. Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned it. That is a big step forward, regardless of what political affiliations you have. You have to see that as a major milestone. But I also noticed that your work tends to take you into different demographics and also different cultures. Is there a particular reason for that? And do you feel as though it's even tougher, even within the struggle and the journey of women coming to an equal footing with men? Do you find that women of culture or from different demographics, so to speak, find it particularly even more difficult?
Through my eyes.
Yes.
And I try I think it's important to develop perspective and to develop empathy to be able to see, or at least try and see the world through other people's eyes, but you never really truly will, because you are
right. Right.
But it's the world definitely doesn't seem fair, does it? And as I said before, and I see a lot of unfairness, and there's a lot of unfairness that I can't do anything about, and there's a lot of unfairness that I can do something about, whether it's coming here and speaking to you today,
yes,
whether it's protesting BLM, whether it's working with my students, whether it's introducing them to people that are experiencing challenges. So it's also about not just myself helping and elevating others, but it's also teaching people how to elevate and how to work with others and how to also promote and foster positive environments. So I don't know.
I think that's powerful. I think that's a really great initiative, a personal initiative to actually pursue and keep going, because you're changing lives just by your effort and the people you touch. Someone said one time, if you really want to change the world, you should start with changing your world. And when I look at the things you're doing, it's apparently you're changing your world. But I want to go into something even more concrete, that if a young girl was listening to us right now, what kind of a mindset does it take for someone like yourself to overcome some of the challenges, which you didn't touch on at all? I know you mentioned you had some challenges you overcame, but I can't begin to imagine, for a lot of the things you've accomplished in a male-dominated world, I mean, if the truth be spoken, what kind of a mindset does it take to accomplish a lot of your accomplishments?
Just a lot of determination, right? It's a lot of I'm gonna do this, and I can do this. And I've been very lucky. I've got a really loving and supportive family, so they've been there for me and have supported me through everything that I've wanted to do. So I would tell myself, you can do this. And whenever I felt like I couldn't, I had other people supporting me, saying you can do this. So, and I think, I get fueled by people, and I see things and I get inspired. And I think, that ability to be inspired creates also passion. And once you have passion, you get bit by it,
Mhm.
and nothing stops you. Nothing stops you. So it's really about finding that thing that you love. And once you do, you're set.
It's amazing. I mean, how important is the role of family in Vanessa's life?
It's very important.
I can imagine it plays a massive role for you. Very close to your family. I know you did. I have to remind myself that you're an artist because of so many things that you do. Because typically, the conventional artists you see is mostly stick to things that artists do. But you're very involved in a lot of spaces. But even in your personal life, I see you run marathons and you go on challenges with your younger brother. Touch on that a little bit for me. What is that about? Is that you just being a rebellious Vanessa Harden, or you're trying to make a statement, or you just care about a healthy lifestyle? Which is it?
um Half marathons. I don't think I could ever do a full marathon. um
My
I
mistake. Half marathons. To
my
me, they're
goodness.
the same, right?
um I I I love a good challenge.
Yeah.
And my younger brother and I, we like to challenge each other. And so something that we decided would be healthy for us, and we both really enjoyed, doing this half marathon. And we did a triathlon after that, and really had a good time pushing each other, and creating this sense of accountability. And of course, I don't live in Montreal, which is where my brother and my family is. And so it's nice to be able to have mutual goals with people that are not necessarily geographically there, because it really also helps you stay closer together. So yeah, no, but that's yeah, I work out. It's definitely something that's good for my head. It's obviously very good for my physical self, but it's
Yes.
also really good for my mental self. And it's something that, when I'm running, I can really meditate and kind of zone out a little bit. Hmm.
Absolutely. Vanessa, you've just to kind of get to the end here, but you which I could speak to you for hours and I could keep you for the whole day just to learn so much of what you've done. But for someone that has have accomplished things that you wanted to do, and you've done them, and you're still in pursuit of your goals and your visions, so you continue to do great things. Is if there's a young woman watching this right now, even a young guy, anybody, person, a mother, and what advice would you give them? What would you like to leave them with?
Mm, that's such a hard one, but follow your instincts. You
Follow
know,
your instincts.
I think for me,
Follow
my
your instincts.
instincts have led me, because my instincts have made sure that I've done things that have made me happy. When I haven't followed my instincts, I haven't been happy, or I've done something that I've regretted. So, follow who you are. Follow your instincts are who you are, right? So it's important to listen to yourself. And I think that would be my advice.
And that would be a great note to say thank you, Vanessa, for your time today and sharing your experiences. I find your accomplishments, as I've said many times in this podcast, to be just amazing and inspiring, especially for any young ladies that are looking to pursue their goals and their vision in life and know that nothing can stop them. Vanessa, I hope to have you on again. Thank you for coming on to the Amen on Bow podcast, and we shall speak again soon.
Thank you very much. It's been my pleasure.
My pleasure. Cheers.